Alright. Oh, no. Still coming up. Okay. Come on. Come on. Finish publishing. Alright, there we go. Now we're live. Haha! Fantastic. Alright, let me drop the link on the... Whoops. Where did I put that? Always too much going on. Alright, here we go. Hey, hello! Yes, I am live! I am back! I am actually alive, I'm actually breathing, I'm actually here. Oh my, so much going on. Hello, hello, hello! So, today we are going through Hippo Finance. Oh man. They've been so patient, so kind, as I've had so much going on and had to hold them until now, so I want to make sure that they get good attention in going through this. So that's where we're going to jump right in on Hippo and start going through. So, for guys who might have seen my last audit, you're starting to see a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes. So, bam, got Mythex as kind of my guide. Again, this is a guide. It is not the authoritative end-all, be-all of assessing. It is still an early tool. I find their interface annoying, but it's a good analysis tool, gives us a good set of guideposts to start looking through things. So remember, we still need to look through everything, alright? This is where we have to look through all the code, have to make sure everything's safe. Now, in this, we do have to realize that some of these are already out, so I realize that this might be a little small, so I'll make that bigger here. So again, recall, some of these are already out. The Master Chef, the Hippo token, those are already out there, as are some of the additional points, but with them already being out, we'll just go ahead and go through some of the, well, status on the code and get that in place. Alright, so with this, we have our very first one, the Hippo token itself. Got that over here in the Mythex, bam, and we can find here, the initial report showed only reported a few low-level vulnerabilities. Slither reported similar ones. Echidna really didn't have a problem with this at all. Everything was perfectly fine. Now, this is, again, one of those points to educate people. All of these, not immediately a problem. More just guideposts, things to look through. So, in going through the Hippo token, we can see, let me zoom that in again, because Remix doesn't save such things, that in here, we have our basic setup. Now, point of order and education for people. Understand that we have in here the Hippo token. It has this mint operation for only owner, so that can be, this is very typical for how things get minted and getting them set up. So again, perfectly normal in having that set up in most cases. In declaring the contract, in getting that set up, this is just being used as that first point to create some tokens. We can see when we're getting to the, or when it's setting up for the constructor here, because technically that's much of what's happening here in the declaration for the contract. They're actually constructing it that ERC20, and this is where up in that ERC20 it has the excuse me, that call for setting up the initial tokens. But again, it's already in, this one's already out. So to be clear here, this is what's out. We're just going through, assessing what's already there, giving people that assurity. Alright? So, in this case, bam, we have some basic data structures, interest about delegates. So again, this is where it's been slightly modified from the YAM code to set up. If you're curious, you can go look at that. They even have the links here in the GitHub for that. In this case, they're keeping track of initial delegates for managing such. So again, this is where an address can delegate their votes to another address. So able to keep track of that. In our, nothing really can go wrong here. Like everything's set up, just marked as internal, so that way, bam, you can actually, so bam, that way it's only going to be read internally. People can't see who they're delegating their votes to. Got a checkpoint data structure, nothing going on in here that can go wrong, really. I mean, when I say really, it's just a couple numbers. That's it. So, As long as those don't go too high or too low, then there can't be a problem. And honestly, if you've got so many votes that you can't fit into a 256-bit integer, I definitely want to talk about what planet you're on. But that's not going to happen. There is a certain number of tokens that is going to limit that. So, cool. Now, well, in the chat, I'm not sure how many people are fudders. I'm never really entirely sure how many are just joking. Sarcasm doesn't come through so well on text. But you know what? Don't care. They can say whatever they want. You guys have the tokens. All I'm doing is providing you information about the code and whether or not it will operate. I am not making any comment on the viability of the project, as in the economics. I may at times freak out a little bit about that, get a bit of a nerd at times, but not financial advice, not professionally engaged to provide any sort of indemnification against this. I am doing this as an educational process about the code quality of various projects, and using it as a jumping off point to talk about code in general and things to handle for your research. So, I understand, some of them may be idiot fudders, some of them may be joking. I don't know, if they start spamming and getting too disruptive, then by all means, we've got plenty of mods in here that can help out with that. So, in this case, heading on, we have here a mapping of checkpoints. Again, this is an address to a mapping of a 32-bit integer to a checkpoint, so really nothing can go wrong there. We've got same things for num checkpoints, address to integer. We've got a domain type hash. In this case, there is a specification here for managing that domain. In this case, just handling in a type hash of the contract's domain. Basically a way to kind of keep track of how that's handling and what that's going to be speaking with. Similar thing with the delegation type hash, so that way it can identify exactly which one is out there and handling such. Nonces. Now, in this case, it's keeping a record of signing and validating signatures. So, interestingly enough, this one is actually keeping track of the transactions that come through. Because again, remember, when you're executing a transaction, that, if I pull up one of my old ones here, and you look at what's going on in Etherscan with that, remember that for your one wallet, yes, I had to sell some NFY, I wanted to see what was going on with Core and wanted to track transactions. When you are executing a transaction, your wallet is sending a unique identifier. It really just iterates through for each transaction. So, like right there, I'm up to 1,267 on this wallet. So this is actually keeping track of which address and the nonce for actually being able to keep track of signatures that are moving through, it looks like. So, interesting. Guys, is the very first DeFi hedge fund. Huh. Which one are you talking about? Oh, right, that. Sorry, I've been losing track of the chat there. I apologize. I've been wanting to focus on getting through the code here. So, understand. You want to see a real face. Well, don't you know that the internet is real life? So, this is a face, and it's on the internet, and the internet is real life, therefore, this is a real face. Do you mean you'd like to see, like, a human, like, biological face? You could, but I don't want to scare the children. I mean, trust me, you don't want to see what's back here. It is not pretty. I barely have a voice for radio. I certainly do not have a face for streaming. So, but whatever. I don't know, if you love me that much, then definitely talk later. We can, totally try to set up a date or something. I mean, if it's what's going to get you off to see my face, I suppose we could try to work something out. I'm just going to need, like, videos of that, so. Anyway, now, moving on, back into the audit. We've got some nice events. I love a good wordy contract, something that logs what is occurring. So in this case, every time there's a delegate change, it's keeping track of that. Every time the delegate votes change, keeping track of that. Nice, that way we can be sure. Heading on down for delegates, again, this is just a function for, well, being able to read out those delegates. So in this case, it is quite reading, you're just passing in the address of the delegator, and it is pulling that out. Direct and simple. In this case, because it is a view function, and it is only returning information, there is no further execution being done, and therefore we don't need to worry about making use of a raw address there. Reentrancy wouldn't really be a concern because there's nothing being done here other than retrieving info. So if you tried to re-enter this one, okay, great. One, we're not even really doing anything with you because we're not calling you. We're just using you to look something up. And two, we're not making change to any data, so you can try, but you're not really going to be accomplishing much. Similar point here on Delegate, that is assigning a delegate. Again, similar point here, it is calling Delegate and is passing in the message sender and the delegate-he. In this case, this is marking an internal function that is being managed by the spec up above that we saw that it's implementing in there, within the ERC20 and the ownable further moving up that chain to where that actually is handled. And we've got delegate by sig. This is where technically if you need to delegate by a signature instead of just a direct address, again, you can define that. We can keep track of the nonce. This is where it is, as you can see here, delegates votes from signature to delegate-he. Delegate-he, the address to delegate votes to. Nonce, the contract state required to match the signature. Expiry, the time at which to expire the signature. V, the recovery by the signature. R, half the ECDSA signature pair. And S, half of the ECDSA signature pair. It looks like in here, they are using this as a way to handle the delegation process through the signature that is done for a transaction. Bam. Yes, refuel to Mars. By all means, let's go ahead and get to Mars. I got my own opinions on that. I do think we need to get off world and all that. I think colonizing planets is kind of the wrong way to go. We should build giant space habitats and live there. The only reason that you should bother with a planet is after you've consumed all of the asteroids to build habitats. Then maybe you bother with a planet, but at that point you're just tearing the thing apart to build giant, space tubes, O'Neill cylinders, and Dyson rings, and stuff like that. I mean, to be honest, once you've gotten out of a gravity well, why go back down unless you absolutely have to? But, boom, off to Mars by all means. If you've got the money and that's where you want to go, do it. As my buddy Dr. Weird says, if you can make it happen, if you can afford to be tooling across the galaxy in a big, giant, steampunk, sci-fi, locomotive just chugging your way, because fuck it, you can, why not? So, he's kind of a steampunk guy. Anyway, well, not really a steampunk guy. Anyway, mechanical engineering, back to the code. Alright, in here, we can see that after it's gone through and processed, so for everyone clear, that's what's happening here, is all this is doing, all these things like the API and code here, and here where it's declaring this variable, so it's declaring the type and the name for the variable, all these are doing is converting information passed in into a format that we can work with. So that's it. It's literally just a translation process. It's kind of like saying, turning an acronym into a full word. You can type road on your mail, or you can type RD. You can type boulevard or BLVD. You can type street or ST. This is kind of that process. It's just converting it from one thing to another for being able to work with it in a different way without changing the meaning at all. From there, it goes through and boom, sets up that recovery to say, all right, let's get the signatory out of this. How are we doing that? Well, there is some work in the EC recovery where it is taking that digest, the various information about the signature. That's why work had to be done here to set up such, so that way we can try to manage some of that down here. And further, having figured out the signatory, having figured out or made sure the signatory is not address 0, make sure that that's, address 0 doesn't get to do much other than process data, and adds in for the nonces that nonce for the signatory. So it's going to keep track of that and make sure that the contract is not getting tricked in some way. So it's keeping count effectively as it's going through. So, thank you very much, Lambo, for jumping on this. You know what? I apologize. I have not been coordinating with you properly. I've been all over the place. I promise we've caught up on a lot of work. I will get back with you on properly scheduling these things, properly managing them. That way we can be properly coordinated. So I appreciate you being available at last minute, like every time I hop on and jumping in there. I do not want to continue treating you like that, so I am very sorry that I have not planned things before with you. Just been swamped. We'll get that taken care of. And also see about getting you on staff, because we need to get some fucking funding in here. Anyway, now, in this case, it is going through, making sure that there has not been an expiration on that signature, and then boom, delegating that. As far as getting the current votes, simple enough, just passing the address, and then returning back to say, alright, well, what are your addresses? And we will, in pulling that out, we will double check to make sure that, yeah, you bothered to have made I'm pulling out the checkpoints to see, alright, have you actually gone through and cast any votes? Have you actually reached any of those checkpoints or such? If so, then we'll go ahead and pull those out and confirm. So again, this is a view function. It is not making any changes. That's why we don't need to be so concerned about having a raw address there like I was saying before. So, yes, congrats to the Hippo team. You guys have a project out. It's successful. People are buying. So, kudos to you guys. But I'm here for code. We can talk finance another time. Because again, not financial advice, not any sort of professional indemnification. I'm not even properly engaged by the devs. Not even properly engaged by you guys. This is a charity. We are working for tips and donations. So by all means, help us out. We will be working out a fee structure for these things going forward, but that is going to be also accompanied with plenty of grants. So if someone can't afford something like that, we can continue on. But on for the code. In here, we can also get the prior votes. So this is looking back and getting information about previous votes. That way, we can check previous behavior and find out exactly, how things went. So again, keeping track of those checkpoints based on the account, just confirming that if there are no checkpoints, then we're going to go ahead and return 0. This is actually a good bit of defensive coding, because in this case, it's doing that check to say, okay, well, first, I'm not really going to let this address down into most of what the rest of is going on in this function. It's really just using it right here and pulling out that information and then using it directly, which is handy, a bit more efficient in the code, and a good habit of defensive coding. Again, this is a view function, therefore doesn't really do much, but in that case, still want to build that habit of good defensive programming. So I like to see that there. Heading on down, we've got where it's checking checkpoints here. Again, pulling it up by the account, confirming what the checkpoints are, and again, doing their various checks to ensure that, yes, you do actually have some, that, one, it's not, that you have actually engaged with the thing, and thus they aren't running the risk of returning some weird value that although the default in all of this is 0. So, again, just kind of very defensive programming, which I like to see. Defensive programming means that the developers are actually thinking about things and taking that measure to say, look, we're not entirely sure what could go wrong here, we can't predict the future, therefore we can't know everything that could possibly go wrong in the coming years or decades. Because you gotta remember, a lot of what we're building here, this stuff could be around for decades. I mean, it's entirely possible that people are going to be trading this Hippo token in 2030, 2040, 2050. It is entirely possible that at some point long in the future, there's going to be some bored, version of a Minecraft YouTuber out on the edge of the galaxy digging through the archives, and they come across the Hippo token. So that's why I like to see good defensive programming, even though you might be able to look at something and say, you know what, I can't think of any reason why this could go wrong. Might as well just throw in the little bit of protection to be safe. So, as I was saying, doing the various checks to confirm, hey, have you reached your checkpoint? Are we actually getting correct values? And does all of that match up? Now, for handling things for the center and upper, again, in this case, the checking out these points, it is pulling them from the checkpoints. It is doing that based on the account and that upper. In this case, it's doing the upper as in what the last checkpoint is, so confirming that. And again, really just some basic math to kind of confirm that it actually has some useful information to be able to go out. Alright? So, share the tweet? I'm not sure what tweet you're talking about. Alright. If you mean tweet of me talking about the stream, I'm not sure how else you got here, but okay. Share the tweet about announcing this. Yes, right. Thank you. Yes, please, everyone, share the tweet. Sorry, I am very, very frazzled and very, very busy, so I'm just losing track there. Alright, let me make sure you get a wrench there for helping out. Thank you. Yes, and destroy that like button. Just tap it, or maybe tap it gently. Rub it softly, like a gentle little button. All right, anyway. So, here in Delegate, this is the operation that we saw earlier where it was internal. That's what the internal functions mean, that they are not able to be executed from outside the contract. They can only be executed from inside the contract. So, that is where, in setting that up, and we do still want to be cautious about these things, but we have to understand that at times, when we're seeing things like a raw address, or we might see, like, for example, that it's iterating over an array, which would cause, an overflow, well, not exactly an overflow, but an out-of-gas error if the array gets too large. In all of these cases, we have to confirm what was being done up above, because they might not be passing through that raw address. They might not be, well, they might have a hard time suffering from the reentrancy guard, having a reentrancy vulnerability here, in the sense that they're not terribly vulnerable, because you have to come through the overriding function. If the overriding function is executing properly, then you may never even be able to get to this one in that regard. Alright, so, like we saw earlier, that was the internal, or this is the internal delegate function. The one up above will actually be calling this one. This will not be able to pick up any of them. Or sorry, it will not be able to call by outside, so you will not be able to call this yourself. This is just operating inside. But again, that's where it's finding out who the current delegate is, and in finding out what the voting token balance of the delegator is, and then for the delegator, it is saying exactly who that delegatee is. And so in this case, it is actually confirming that, letting everyone know, yep, the delegate changed, and is moving those over. So in the move delegates, we can see what the source recipient and the destination recipient is. In going through this process, it's doing some basic checks to say, okay, well, first off, let's not waste our time if you're trying to transfer your delegated votes from one person to that same person. Like, come on now, that's pointless. Forget it. On top of that, let's not bother doing that if you have 0. Like, if you've got 0, why are you wasting our time? So that's what that if statement is handling there, just making sure, like, look, are you completely stupid? Did you try to do something that would have no purpose whatsoever? If so, we're just going to end this real quick and move on with our lives. Now, in there, it moves down to the source recipient, therefore saying, alright, first that can't be address 0. You see this a lot. In fact, this is good defensive programming. This is probably the most fundamental, basic defensive programming that should be in all contracts, is double checking to see, am I getting a command? Am I sending something? Like, is it possible that address 0 could get in here? It shouldn't be a big issue. The miner should have a hard time making those modifications, but it's a future-proof against any possible future exploits that might allow a miner to inject some information into that. There isn't many known exploits now. Actually, there's one where they can insert that data. There's a weird one where they can play around with the system clock. It's not really that big of an issue in a lot of cases, but if you're using it for randomness, it can be an issue. So just pointing out here another example of good defensive code. And in this case, it's quite literally just going through that same process of, okay, well, you delegated your votes to one person, let's go ahead and delegate them out to another person. Now, from here, we've got the destination recipient. If we're saying, okay, so long as that's not 0, cool, then let's go ahead and go through and we took out the source recipient, updated those. We are now setting the new destination recipient, and again, writing that checkpoint to keep track of where that is. So in this case, the checkpoint, as you saw, is being used for, well, actually, heck, we can just get right into it here. What is the checkpoint being used for? Well, it is doing a check to see that, for one, the block is actually safe. So in this case, it's making sure that the block is valid. This is really defensive programming. I mean, if someone showed me this code on a project, I'd be like, I'm not going to tell you to take it out, but I'm not entirely sure that's necessary. But really defensive programming, because it's making absolutely sure, as things are running through, that, there isn't a chance of some shenanigans being pulled by miners in that regard. Really shouldn't be the case, but it's making that point of, if this somehow, say at some point in the future, there's another chain fork, and someone brings that over, and they kind of roll back to a previous state, this thing, if it's compared to the other fork, would actually be able to notice that difference, because it would be have that difference of block number. Might notice that this thing hasn't picked up and, well, isn't converting properly to a 32 bits. So, like I said, just kind of a super extra safety measure there to make sure that everything is accurate and can work with it. From there, it's doing this check on checkpoints. So in this case, it's saying, all right, we've got our checkpoints. Let's look at the Delegate. Let's make sure that we have a current checkpoint. And in doing that, it's doing it from a block. So in this case, where it is tracking that block number, where, remember, when the miners are mining, they're writing blocks to the chain. Personally, I think we should call them links to the chain. Haha. But whatever. It's keeping track of that to make sure that the work going through is actually progressing, that we're not somehow like going back to some previous point by faking or fudging the block number somehow. So there you go. Now, from here, we can see that it is then setting that checkpoint. So it's establishing, all right, we're going to keep track of that. We're just going to lay in those number of votes and start setting that up. In this case, if this is not all true, as in there is no checkpoints or anything, then, and when it's saying that, okay, if there's no checkpoints, there's nothing here, we don't have anything already in there to work with, then we're going to go ahead and set that up fresh and make sure that we wipe out or clean up anything that might be there, but just kind of going one down and overwriting. In here, it's saying, look, if there are some, if there aren't any checkpoints, then go ahead and just set that up fresh because we need a new checkpoint. So to be clear here, saying if you have checkpoints, cool, go ahead and update the checkpoint. If you don't have a checkpoint for this Delegate, then go ahead and create a new one, and what it's doing here is adding in that checkpoint to say. And again, the checkpoint is just kind of that safety measure, also making it a little easier to pull some of that information out. So there you go. Now, the last one, or the last couple I should say, Safe32, this is just doing a basic check to say, hey, are you a 32-bit number? If not, we will error you out. This is, like I said, super duper extra defensive programming to kind of, like I said, the safeguarding against things that can't really happen now, but conceivably, because we can do all kinds of amazing things with computers, could, in theory, possibly happen at some point in the future. So I want to give credit to these Hippo guys. I did say in the little blurb that I offered up on the article on them that they were very dedicated to the community, very dedicated to satisfying your needs and making sure that everything was safe for you guys. This is that example of what Hippo's doing. Like, in my mind, they're going above and beyond the Call of Duty to the point where it's sometimes even a little ridiculous. It's like, are you really sure you need to be checking these things with 32-bit numbers? Like, the chance of something going wrong there is highly unlikely, and if that part goes wrong, let's just put it this way. I'm of the opinion that if this actually catches an error, we're gonna have a more serious problem on our hands with the fundamental functionality of Ethereum. So whatever. Like I said, not bad. Actually, very, very good. Just pointing out that this is possibly a little bit of overkill. So moving on down. We've got the get chain ID. This is, again, just pulling that information about the, actual chain ID that it's working with. And in that chain ID, we saw that. Let's go back to where that was, because we're at the bottom, and it's been a little while. Doink. Nope, that was up there. Bam. Up here, and that is pulling that in as that domain hash type. So, pretty straightforward there. Alright then. Now, that is the basic Hippo token. We can move on, I think, to Master Chef. Here in Master Chef, this is, again, one that's actually technically already out there. They already were working with this. And so we're kind of just reviewing what's already in place. If I remember correctly, they already said that they had already burned the keys for that, but don't quote me on that. I will leave that to double check with the Hippo people. I apparently have a terrible memory, and there we go. I don't want to misspeak on any of that points, but I do recall reading that, or I think I recall reading that from their website. So there we are. Now, in setting this up, we've got good safe usage here. So up here, safe math for UN256 and safe ERC20 for the iERC20 interface. Always good. That means that they're making sure they're using the Open Zeppelin libraries or modification of those to ensure the safety. Got extra checks on those functions there to make sure everything's safe. got a struct of user info. We've got an amount and a reward debt. So this is how many LP tokens the user's provided. That's the amount. Reward debt, how much is going to be available, or how much they should be paid out to. Now, when it's saying reward debt, this is a very common usage in a lot of contracts, because remember, Ethereum contracts, they can't poll. What polling means is that, or I should say, they can't poll and they can't loop on their own. What I mean by that is they can't just sit there cycling through something periodically. They have to have somebody engage them. They have to have a system call a function. If nothing calls a function, they don't do anything. And hence why a lot of these contracts are maintaining things with a reward debt. The idea being that you are racking up rewards over time. Those rewards are piling up, piling up, piling up. We can't have something that's sitting there idling away, looping to say, hey, guys, I'm doling you out money. And so they're keeping track of that on their front end. They're keeping track here of how much since the last time they calculated what your reward should be, how much reward that is. And so when they come through to update, that's where they will be choink, in rewarding you by pulling that reward debt portion there. So that's where I want to be clear here. It's a very common term that we find in contracts for managing that. It's just that idea that we can't. It's literally a fundamental limitation in the system. We just have no way around that. So, good way to keep track of it. As far as what it is doing here, that is where, in setting it up, I'll make that a bit bigger there so people can hopefully read that. In setting that up, we see that they're doing some fancy math. At this point in time, they are figuring out what your pending reward is. That's going to be equal to the user amount that's been staked. So remember, there's a user info, and down below, they're going to be calling any usage of this user info, the user variable, as an indicator here. They are then looking at the pool, and in the pool, they are figuring out what the accrued or accumulated Hippo per share is, and then subtracting out the reward debt. So they're saying, okay, we're going to look and see, based on what is out there, how much are you due? Cool. We've already done this calculation earlier and kept track of that in the reward debt. So since we've already worked out what you should be due from a previous calculation, and the calculation we're doing now is working out the total that you're due, then we're actually going to deduct the amount from that you have been previously logged or calculated as being due. And so just going to keep adding to that reward debt each time it goes around. And that's why it's taking that out. It's saying, look, I already did this calculation. I already calculated an amount for you. I need to calculate how much to add on. So I'm going to calculate how much to add on by calculating the total amount that you're due, and then subtracting out the amount that I already calculated being due to you earlier. This kind of saves on gas, makes it a little easier to process. So there you go. Where are we? Oh, yes. Also, I want to make sure in people having this, pardon there, in a point here, want to make sure that we have another link here for people. Cointelegraph actually did an article. That is where a lovely person, I hesitate to call people friends only because I don't want to sound so presumptuous. I mean, I think they're friendly. They approached me on giving a quote there, so I also want to give credit to the Tupac Culero Connor. So let me make sure that I get a link to their profile on Twitter too for you guys to catch up on that. They were helping, I'm not sure, I believe they were the entire writer for this blurb, or at least were helping the writer in getting quotes. Again, I was a little unclear on exactly how that is, or exactly what their relationship is, but I do know they made a major contribution to that article for the links that I just dropped, and that is their profile. I would definitely keep up on them because they seem to be, well, it looks like their whole job is keeping abreast of news, so when they got something to report, their whole job is to find that out. So just wanted to call that out there first, since people were talking about links, sharing things, wanted to get that lovely cross-promotion there. Alright, so, moving on from here, we've got the pool info. This is information about the pool. This is, in this case, the LP tokens. Handy so that we don't have to keep going and looking that up every time. And so here it's going to keep track of the pool information, as in what LP token is underneath this pool. So to be clear, if we go to Hippo Finance, when we're talking about the pools, we're talking about these things. These guys right here, all right? So all of these pools here, and because they're all based, well, except for the fork and knife, where it's just Hippo, all of the others are based on LP pools, and thus that is the data structure that is identifying the LP token for that one, and is allocating the number of points assigned to each pool. So again, that's where it is, as you see, defining the Hippo to distribute to blocks. So this is saying that per block that we're calculating rewards, because again, a block is each process or step of the miner. They're keeping track, here's how much Hippo we want to allocate to each person per block. They're keeping track of the last reward block and then that accumulated Hippo per share. So again, that's where they're keeping track of when they last calculated this, and so they don't have to duplicate that. We saw that in the equation up above. Alright, reference to Hippo token. Oh my goodness, I love seeing that. I love seeing that it's typed to the token itself. So much safer than having a raw address. Make sure that you're much easier to work with in that case, because you don't have to make weird, complicated delegate calls. It's much better and safer for everyone to have that. Got a dev address, got the bonus end of block, the Hippo per block, and the bonus multiplier, this one being constant so it can't change, and a migrator, so that way if they do need to update Chef or make some changes, they can migrate that over. But as I recall, they said that they burned that contract, so that really isn't even possible anymore. But they put in that safeguard to begin with, so that if something did happen early on, they would be able to, boom, roll that over there. Now, in here, we've got an array of pool info. That's what that little angle bracket there means. So again, remember, this pool info, anytime we see this pool info, it's actually storing a bunch of these pool info data structures. Excuse me. Now, in the mapping here, it's keeping track of a number. We'll find out what that's for. It looks like the info of each user that stakes LP tokens. Oh, okay, so that's likely going to be keeping track of which pool they're actually staked into, but we'll confirm that coming up. And then that mapping has another mapping inside of it, which is keeping track of the person who staked into the pool, and then the data structure of their user info. Pretty straightforward. Total allocation points. This is one, obviously, they're going to be... This is the first time it's being said. Don't worry that it says 0. They're just saying, alright, this starts off as 0, and then we're going to add to that number once it's out there and as Hippo gets deposited. Actually, also a good safe point, because you want to make sure that when you first deploy this thing, you're going to have to deposit Hippo somewhere for this thing to work with, or Angry Hippo, or Dark Hippo, whatever the reward is. And so you want to start off by saying, well, you don't have any Hippo tokens yet when I first deploy you, and so we're going to set the allocation to 0 because there's nothing to allocate, and then boom, once I pass that in, you'll go ahead and get that set. And same thing with start block, a nice safety measure to say, okay, we're not going to bother starting all of this until this point in the future. Simple enough. Cool. Oh, wow. Almost 220 people. Neat. So, from here, nice wordy contract. Got deposit, withdrawal, emergency withdrawal. Again, recalling that this is where... What? Oh, yes. Thank you, Limbo, for pointing that out. So, in here, that is where we will have the... when it's constructed, it's getting info about the Hippo token, the dev address, the block where we'll start earning or distributing rewards. That's already passed. Because again, we're technically looking at the thing that is already out there and already been giving you rewards. But in this case, we're going back and confirming that, yes, this is actually safe, so people can move forward and can invest. This is, I mean, keep in mind, folks, like, we are at the stage of a revolution in finance, provided, like, the state doesn't completely freak out and screw us, and even then we're working on the tech to kind of prevent that from being able to happen. Then this is the sort of thing, like, you guys are buying in on what could, like, Hippo, other projects out there, like, it is entirely possible that you are buying into the next Prudential, hence why they want to be a little cautious, make sure that they're starting the rewards at certain times, and exactly when the bonus might end. So, boom, they go through, they set all of that, and this is where, again, remember that we don't have floating point numbers in... it's Ethereum code, it is all integers, and so we're having to move that around, and so in this case they're going to be dividing that in to take off some number to move the decimal point over to the left for that, alright? Because people always ask, every time I do this, somebody points out, like, wait a minute, that's a giant number. Clearly something is wrong. Remember, no floating point. We have to account for the decimal points, or the places after the decimal, by just adding the zeros and then dividing. That's why you see so much divide by 18 or anything. Okay, no, I don't really see how. All the liquidity's locked, so it can't really be rugged. But whatever. Oh, yes, the Hippo per block. Yeah, that's where, again, it's not a big mistake. I was just pointing out that when people are looking at this and seeing, like, wait a minute, that's a huge number, remember, you gotta take off by moving the decimal point in several points. And so when you do that, because we got that, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18. Bam! 18. Standard. The Hippo token has a decimal point, or has 18 decimal places. That is pretty much the max in these cases. And so, boom, everywhere you see down in there, you should see this getting divided by 18 to actually indicate that. So, there we go. Okay, Sam, I don't know where you can just go off into a timeout, because I'm gonna be very clear here. If you make an accusation, I want evidence. I'm happy to hear evidence. I will investigate evidence. In fact, I really want evidence. So if anyone ever says anything about anything they think is going on with the project, if they ever claim that a dev is the same, they ever claim that there's some operation in there or some function that can damage something, evidence. If you do not have evidence, you are a liar. Period. I do not care that you heard it somewhere and you're just repeating things. I don't care that you've got all kinds of reasoning to think through that maybe you're right. I need evidence. Everyone needs evidence. We want transaction logs. We want to actually see screenshots of chat. We want to make sure that IDs are in that screenshot so that we can confirm exactly who is talking. Even then, that's not entirely good enough, but at least it's something that we can work off of. So, categorically, if you come in to anywhere where I have any sort of control, and you make an unsubstantiated accusation, and you cannot provide evidence, instant ban. I do not give a fuck. Fuck you. You're either lying and being malicious, or you're too fucking stupid to bother with. Alright? That's a blanket rule wherever I am. If I got mod rights on anything, you make an unsubstantiated accusation, boom, you're fucking gone. If you make an accusation, you put the goddamn evidence in with that accusation. Period. Alright, just a little point of order there. Back to the code. So again, remember, when you see large numbers like this in this, we don't have floating point numbers in Ethereum, therefore we have to put the extra decimal points at the end. You can confirm that as we go through and see where the various divisions are taking place. Bam. I don't know why Nyan are the toxic ones. I like Nyan. I like Hippo. I like Nyan. Like, come on, guys. This is such a small, young sector. There is so much room to grow. We do not need to be hampering each other, for fuck's sake. Think about it, people. If you spent less time attacking each other and more time building, then we would have taken over the fucking world by now. God, jeez, people. Really? Fuck. Like, when people ask me, do I buy this or do I buy this? I'm like, both! You buy fucking both! Jeez! Diversify! It's all, so long as it doesn't turn into a scam or the people don't abandon it, it's all gonna go somewhere. If something's not as profitable as something else, it's still fucking profitable! God! And who knows, something on the road may happen. Anyway, sorry, I got my little rant here. Like I said, I don't want to compete. I mean, competition is nice and everything, but let's have friendly rivalries. There's no need to hamper yourself. But then, I'm not entirely sure that was the Nyan people. Maybe it is. Don't know. Not gonna say it was an unsubstantiated rumor, because that was just an unsubstantiated accusation, because that was just kind of a offhanded comment. It wasn't a straight up, these are the people doing it. So I'm not gonna hold that against you, but I'm just gonna say, like, we don't really know what's going on there. Could be any number of things. Anyway, back to code. Now, heading in here for changing the reward. This is where only the owner can change the reward, and as I recall, they had go ahead and burn that key, so now they cannot make this modification, but that was where they, as I would interpret this, as them wanting to be able to respond to community requests and considerations, and thus be able to update this if the community felt that this wasn't good enough, or was too high, or whatever. And so that way they just had that option. But again, the key, as I understand it, has been burned, and therefore this can't do anything any further. So no worries there. On top of that, they are going to be requiring it that it can only go down in that check. So that was an extra check to say, okay, we can't actually turn this up. We have to make sure that we are turning it down. Namely, are we passing in an amount of Hippo to reward that is less than the Hippo that is currently being rewarded? So this is where, as a safety measure, if you guys wanted to turn down to draw this out even longer, they could have, but to protect against a dump, they made sure that it could not be turned up. Because to be clear here, if they did not have this, they have this in here, this is protection, it can't be called now, but when it could be called, this would be protection against a possible dump, because they wouldn't be able to crank this thing up, have it pour out a bunch of rewards real fast, and then dump that. Couldn't have happened here. All they could have done was turn that down, and that, from every indication of working with the team, seeing how they behave in their Discord, seeing how they interact with the community, I would be wholeheartedly considered that was simply done to get feedback from the community to consider, do you guys want to drag this out even longer? So, from there, we've got a pool length. It is just a simple view, so it's just telling you how many pools are there in this process. From here, they've got an add. So this is where they are adding a new liquidity token to the pool. So they are adding in a new pool. They're defining that allocation point. They're letting you know what token that's going to be represented with and how that's going to be updated. And in this, they're just confirming, okay, is this something that should be updated, or do we want to update the existing pools at the same time we're adding in a new pool? That is why that's a Boolean there. And so it's doing that and goes, okay, well, go update everything that's already out there. Then it's doing that consideration of, all right, so what was the last reward block? Is that after the start block and such? If so, then let's go ahead and add up the allocation points. And right here, let's go ahead and add that pool to the, well, array of pools. Boom, off it goes. And as you can see, it's pulling in all that information from there, including what the last reward block is. That's why it's doing that check to say, all right, where are we now? Where is that coming from? If it's after when the start should be, then we'll go ahead and set that to the block number. If it's before that, then we're going to set it to the start block, so that way it comes up in the future, all right? So, oh, well, thank you. I'm very glad you think I'm doing a good job. Let's see here. Oh, I understand. Please, Shane, don't think that I was holding that against you. That's why I was calling out there to others to be clear on, like, hey, guys, I don't want you to consider that, like, that unsubstantiated accusation. I'm sure Shane was just making an offhanded comment or something, and it wasn't targeted at a particular person, so we're good there. And I totally get it that if you got, if you've seen that case of people fighting against a project, and you're just kind of reporting, like, hey, I've seen this over here, I think that's what's happening over here, totally understandable. So please, don't take what I was saying as a criticism. I was more calling out to say to people, like, hey, don't hold it against Shane. Shane seems to be reporting what is happening out there and how that might have bled in here. All right, so moving on. We've got here where it adds in, as far as the setting, this is giving the pool's allocation point. Again, only called by the caller. Again, has the option to mass update the pools. And in doing that, figuring out, all right, how much should be allocated by those pools and updating the various pieces of information. And since this has no addresses or anything in there, there's really, and it's only can call by the owner, really nothing that can go wrong there. Really, the worst thing that could happen is technically they could pass in a value that for a pool that is already in there, an ID for a pool that's already there. But, at a certain point, if you can't trust your dev to do basic shit, like keep track of the number of pools they have, we got way bigger problems than trying to write defensive code against that. So, we're generally good on that point. Now, in here, set the migrator. This is where you can update that migrator to be able to switch over. But again, not really relevant because they burn the keys. And then the migrate. This migrate is intended to be able to migrate the chef contract from one point to another, or be able to migrate pools over from one chef contract to another. And so that is where, in setting up that migrator, it's checking to say, okay, what is the migrator? Cool, we're going to get the info about the pool. We're going to read out the pool token, the balance. We're going to go ahead and approve the LP token to approve the migrator to move the balance. We're going to have the migrator migrate the LP token yeah, migrate from one LP token to another LP token, and in doing that, double check and say, all right, are we absolutely positive that that went properly? That's why he's got a good require. I like having that require there to say, look, are we positive that all the stuff we just did happened correctly? Because if it didn't, we're kind of fucked. And thus, this is that last check. Really, really defensive programming. This is where, like, I really want to give kudos to the Hippo guys for being super defensive in their programming to say, hey, guys, heads up, we just did some changes. We're pretty sure nothing could have gone wrong. I mean, I don't see how any of what that did could have gone wrong, but this is making that case of, alright, so we're just going to double check that everything got migrated over properly. If something went wrong there and we weren't able to migrate from one LP token to another, then, or sorry, from one pool to another, then we're like, okay, we're just going to hold off on that, okay? So again, this is just setting up, being able to migrate from one token to another. So, in this case, we are then just setting the pool what the new token is, so having confirmed that that went through properly, and therefore the new LP token has the appropriate balance of, well, this address, has that new token, then boom, we're off to the races. Cool. Getting a multiplier, again, a view. This is the reward multiplier. It's just doing some basic check to see, alright, what phase of the rewards program are we in? So, like, where in this process are we for that? Is it time for us to end the bonus? If it is, we're going to, or sorry, if it's not time for us to end the bonus, then we're going to report that with the multiplier. If it's later and it is time that we ended the bonus, then we're just going to report what that is. Pretty straightforward. We've got another view function to see the pending hippos. Again, this is a view. As I say, it's for the front end. So this is where, when you're logging in and you can see some of the pending Hippo, well, actually, I believe it was on Hippo Classic where they had that, yeah, where they were saying what the lock supply is and what was coming out. That was a way to get some of that information about what is going to be rewarded for each pool. I'm sorry, I think that it's actually over here where it would be showing that. Yep, where it was going to be showing exactly how much could be doled out over time and show you that amount of, well, Hippo yet to be awarded. Pretty straightforward. Doing some basic math, checking a pool, checking a particular user for a pool to see, okay, how much are you supposed to be awarded here? From there, figuring out what the accrual per share is, then figuring out what the token supply is. So it's checking to say, okay, the pool has the token, or I should say, I'm the contract as the master chef. I have the LP tokens. That's assigned to a pool. Let me check to see, boom, how much of these LP tokens do I actually have? And then here, doing that basic check to say, alright, are we done rewarding yet or not? If we are, as in the block number is greater, or I should say, have we rewarded since the last block? Sorry, not done. Have we rewarded since the last block? Then it's checking to see, alright, have we done that? Yes. Then go ahead and go through here and update the rewards, make sure, or sorry, update what we'll be able to show and show them the accurate number. That way we're actually picking that up. Otherwise, it just moves through and says, alright, cool, we're just going to show you what reward you are due when that next gets distributed. So, there you are. Oh, you're very welcome. I am so glad that you are enjoying this. I'm really happy that people are enjoying my educational points on, like, how it works, and not just, like, it works. Because I read reports from other auditors, I'm like, if you're not technical, you don't understand what any of this means. You just get a report and it doesn't scream everything's broken. So I'm like, okay, well that's cool, but how is anyone supposed to know what's going on going forward? So boom, I'm glad people are liking the educational points. By all means, have a wrench. Thanks for helping. Trying to fix your buying... Okay, I don't know. I haven't been keeping up on chat, so pardon. Got work to do. Alright, update pool. This is going ahead and updating the reward variables. In this case, we don't need to worry about anyone calling this. That's why it can be public with no protections, because this is just simply updating the rewards that should go out to a pool. So this is that point of saying, alright, we want to actually update a pool, as in figure out if we should be doling out the rewards yet. We got that basic if check to say, alright, is it time? Is it appropriate for us to actually dole out rewards? If not, if the current block number is less than or equal to the last block rewards number, and again, this is defensive programming because they want to make sure that it's not less than and it's not equal to. Really couldn't have a way of it being less than. Like, if the block number is ever less than the last block reward, something's gone horribly, horribly wrong, and you should probably get out of Ethereum, because this isn't a Hippo problem, that's like a blockchain problem, alright? Like I said, good defensive programming. Now, oh, excellent. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Alvaro. Sorry, it's a little small on my screen there, and I'm keeping track. So, yes, thank you very much. I appreciate all of the feedback, and I'm glad you guys are liking this. So, with that, and glad you're learning, like, Data Lords, got a channel. I'll be working with him, hopefully, in a bit here, now that I've caught up on a bunch of stuff. And he's in similar ones that he's gotten back into programming. Actually has a project now, Telecoast, but we'll save talking about that, because right now, this is Hippo's show. So, with this, in here we're figuring out that multiplier by looking at the last block reward, looking at the block number. We saw earlier where it's getting that multiplier and doing that calculation. It's doing that, again, calculation to say, okay, how much am I supposed to offer out per block? So that's where it's getting the multiplier, figuring out how to multiply, or multiplying that by the Hippo per block. It is, boom, figuring out the multiples there, and in this case, is actually minting out new Hippo. So again, this is something to be sure on. We were talking about, hey, it's got a minter up there. How does that function, and is that actually safe? Well, in this case, because in minting it, it is technically passing the dev address, but the dev doesn't have that control anymore because they kind of burn that ability, set it to something else. Then this thing is, or they adjusted that so that it can be controlled. This thing is creating that new Hippo as it goes through, but we always knew this was the case. They had always declared this was happening, and this way it is actually doling out that Hippo, which, interestingly, people might think that this is bad, but I actually interpret this as being good, because what this means is that there was not an extant amount of Hippo out in the world that could possibly dump on you. There wasn't anything that could be rugged in that regard. It's literally generating the rewards that it needs as it goes along. And we know there's an end in sight because there's an end to the rewards being done. We just saw up above that at a certain point a block will reach its limit, or sorry, will reach the last block for the rewards, and so nothing more can get created. So, interestingly, this might, like, at first glance seem like a horrible idea, like, oh my god, they're just creating new tokens. No, 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 no. Because we saw earlier, and again, I mean, this is my interpretation, everyone can do their own interpretation. My interpretation here is that that actually ends up being a safer structure because we know when the rewards will end. We have that from when the last block that's going to go through. We know that, in this case, there are not that extant Hippo out in the world. There isn't more being created, or sorry, there isn't more already in circulation that could possibly dump, possibly rug, like any, well, rug is pulling liquidity, so it would have to be something they could withdraw, but they can't dump on you, they can't pull any shenanigans with the tokens, and while they may have some locked up, they also don't have to worry about, like, you guys don't have to worry about them, like, stealing the additional token, like the reward tokens or anything, because they're just creating the tokens on demand as necessary, but we still know exactly how many there's going to be, because the only time or way tokens are being created is where, boom, it is actually being sent out. And so again, this is where the dev is just getting their small portion, and again, when it says mint, it's saying that, one, the contract can only mint its own tokens, and the dev is just getting a small portion, and because here, we saw that's a 20, remember, I said up above, 18 decimal points, we gotta divide by a number to move that decimal point to the left. Well, we saw here, dev's doing that by moving it 20 to the left. So, as the devs moves that 20 to the left, well, 18 was 50, and as we divide that up, we move another 2 over, that's 0.5. So the dev's literally getting half a Hippo for this. And, which I also kind of like in that point, because now the dev is getting reward. We know exactly what the dev's getting rewarded. We know that those tokens are not out there to possibly dump on us or pull a scam in any regard. On top of that, we know exactly how much the dev is getting, which, if I'm doing my calculation correct, is half a Hippo, which is perfectly fine. I mean, I also find that good because that then aligns the dev's interest with the community's interest, because the dev is knowing, look, I'm only getting paid if Hippo is worth something. On top of that, my payment is getting doled out slowly over time. I'm never getting a lump sum, and therefore they have every interest. Like, now they are fully committed. The only way they succeed at all is making Hippo valuable, which I really like. I like aligned self-interest. You can kind of end up with, like, weird things like a standalone complex that can kind of look like a conspiracy in some weird ways. But that's, like, Discordian theology, and I'll save that for another time when I sermonize. This is just making it clear that the dev is getting a structured payment. You can think of this kind of like a vesting cycle in traditional finance to say, but rather than have a bunch of stuff and waiting for that to vest, the dev is saying, look, I'm going to get a tiny reward doled out to me over time. You know that there's no big payday that I could get and go crazy and, like, fuck you all. And so they demonstrated in the code, they have to stick with this project. They have to stick with the project. They have to make Hippo valuable because they're only getting paid for as long as this is going on. And they're only getting paid for as long as this is valuable. So, really good point there. And also, this contract giving itself, that's what the address this means, saying, okay, I need more to be able to dole out rewards. I'm not going to hold on to a massive pool and transfer those over. I'm literally just going to create the necessary Hippo to be able to do that. So again, I want to point out here, as you saw in earlier tweets, the name of a function, completely irrelevant. The purpose of the function, relevant, but not the only deciding factor. You have to look at how the function is being used. And so I really like how they're using the mint function here to safeguard you guys. That way there is not this giant Fort Knox of Hippo out in the world that you're constantly worried something may happen with. It may get stolen, it may, the timer may run out on something and they might steal something. So, like, interestingly enough, I think this process is better than the time locks that other teams are using. Because there's not a deadline, there's not a massive payday. This is a built-in, time-based, structured payment that they're going to get a payment for as long as this goes on, and the only way they get anything of value is provided this thing continues being of value. And because it's being doled out little by little over time, then there's never a point where they can, like, pump this thing up right before they get their payday and then dump it all. We've seen that happen so many times with so many other projects. But I'm focusing a bit on this point. I know that a lot of people like to spread FUD around the word mint. I want to be very, very clear here what is going on with this minting and why I actually think this is a good thing. This is a good design, in my opinion, because it aligns everyone's interests and safeguards people against either hacks or dumps. Because we saw earlier that the only way this can be called is by the owner or as part of updating the pool. And since it's strictly controlled on how much is getting created at a time, it's not accepting an argument. Because again, notice, it's based on the Hippo reward and it's only sending it there. So there's no argument coming in to say where this should go. And therefore, there's not a way that anyone could, like, re-enter into this and be able to make any serious changes. Because we're also doing that check on the block number. So this thing has a governor on it, effectively. Like, it's spinning around trying to mint, and if somebody were to sit here and just, like, spam out calling this thing, then it's just not going to work because it's going to realize, well, you already called me since last block. So I'm just not going to do anything. That's what the return here is doing. It's saying if this is ever true, as in we're still within the last block or earlier since we did the rewards, just go ahead and end. That's what the return here is saying. So again, really wanted to point that out. Hope everyone understands my point there. So that's very clear on, like, yes, we have a mint function. No, mint functions are not inherently evil. You have to look at how it's being used, not just what it does or what the name is. So, moving on. Deposit. This is where people, you guys, the buyers, and I'm going to make a point of calling everyone buyers now, not investors. Alright? To be clear here, you're not investors. Alright? See, investors invest in properly incorporated businesses and possibly are investing in purchasing a security. You're not buying a security. You're not buying into an ownership share or share of future profits of any business. You are buyers of a token. Alright? When I say buyers, if I ever slip up and say investors, hold my feet to the fire, call me names, whatever, you're buyers. Let's go ahead and prime all of that with the proper language so we don't freak out the normies in the state, because they really got no idea what the hell is going on. Alright, so deposit. This is where you guys are depositing your whatever it is, the LP token, the Hippo token, whatever is appropriate to that pool for doling out the rewards. Pardon me. And so, with that, we are going in, getting information about the pool by looking up the ID. We are then updating the user info for that point there in the message sender. I normally like to see this being wrapped in some usage, as in wrapping in the context message sender. But in this case, not a big idea or not a big problem because, as you can see, we're using that to pull out of that information. So, to be clear here, the giant risk of using a raw address like you get out of message sender is when you call a function against that. When you're doing it for a lookup, not that big a deal, alright? So, this is where, in this case, actually, when I say not a big a deal, not a big deal at all. Especially when you copy that out to another storage variable and thereby actually give that safeguard. Again, defensive programming. So I want to highlight here that in a weird way, well, actually not a weird way, but effectively, they wrap the message sender address themselves by just saying, all right, go get me the user information, and boom, now they can just operate on the user. So, bam, they're done. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you like that. I enjoy the head pats. Here, have a wrench for patting the Doge head. So, moving on. We've got the update pool. We saw that ability up above. Fantastic. So every time you deposit, it's going to go ahead and update the pool, and we saw that it does that only once per block, so no way this could be misused in that regard without there being like a serious fundamental problem with Ethereum. So long as Ethereum functions, this thing should be fine as far as we can see. Alright. Now, in this case, we're checking to see if the user amount is greater than 0, so did you actually send an amount? If not, or if you did, great, then we're going to go ahead and update you. If not, well, we don't even need an else, it's just not going to satisfy it, it's going to keep moving on, so whatever. In this case, it's going through and figuring out how much to share with you. We already talked about that, and seeing, hey, is there any pending amount? Or sorry, we did the calculation, and in doing the calculation, if there is a pending amount to dole out to you, then boom, let's go ahead and transfer that Hippo to you. So in this case, when you go to deposit, this is, as you probably saw with many contracts, but especially Hippo, it's already withdrawing your rewards at the time you deposit. This also helps out a bit because it simplifies the process for the devs because they don't have to try to figure out how to update your pending rewards when you stake again. They're just like, look, here, we'll just give you back your reward that you have pending, and then go ahead and update that so we don't have to try to figure out how to keep that in sync and everything. Alright, so, moving on. Oh, pardon, there's more. In this case, it's checking the amount that is being deposited and saying, okay, if that's greater than 0, then we're going to go ahead and transfer from you those LP tokens to us. And again, in these cases, in managing that, if this was some case where, again, we're wrapping that in address to get that message sender. And so this is a case, again, that wrapping point is not using context, but technically it is wrapping it in a different operation to say, all right, just make this an address. I don't want the actual message sender in its entirety. So again, more defensive programming. These guys are very, very cautious about everything they're doing. So we're totally good there. I did technically offer a pull request where I just converted message sender to the wrapper, but that's just my autism saying, message.sender bad, I must make it go away. Now that that was gone, we're good. And I'm highlighting here, this is perfectly safe, everything's okay there, we have nothing to worry about. Alright? Like I said, it makes me nervous, and I just want to wrap all of it. Whether it's even warranted or not. So again, this is perfectly safe here in how they're wrapping that and handling it. Now, in this case, user amount, they're adding that on, boom, totally good. They're calculating out that reward debt and adding that into the user struct of above. As far as withdrawal, similar point. They're going through saying, all right, what pool are you working with? Great, I'll get the ID, I'll get the pool info. From there, what user are we working with? Cool, I'll pull that out of the user info array for that pool. And boom, off we go. It's then checking to see, hey, what amount do you want to withdraw? Do you actually have that amount? If you don't have that amount or greater, then we're done. There's no point in even continuing on. It goes ahead and updates the pool. It's like, oh, you want to withdraw? Okay, well, real quick, boom, let me thwink. Had a, yeah, I give out mod points to folks. Like, if you're helpful, if you're answering questions, if you're at all appreciative, like, have a mod. We can always take it away. I mean, how much damage can you really do here? Start deleting other people's messages? Like, okay, then we'll just take your mod away and move on. Tell people that dumping that they are stupid. Okay, yeah. Like, I'm, you know what? People can make their own financial decisions, so I won't necessarily say stupid, but I will definitely agree with you on this seems like a, what should I say, sound investment? Safe, I think, would be the right term. Safe as in, there is not something that I can see that could really go wrong in the code. You know, it's defensively coded. It is a sound, stable process they're going through. The algorithms function properly. And so safe in the sense that doesn't look like anything can really go wrong, and thus have you suffer some sort of error. Sound investment, as in, will it make money? I got no idea. I'm not saying that to be bad or anything. It's just like, look, I don't make economic comments on these points. I make goob about the economics sometimes as like a nerd on that point, but I'm not making an assessment on the viability. So I would definitely agree with you in that case of like, I have no idea. Anyway, I don't know what you're getting at with the question there, Amir. Why is volume so high with only 50k liquidity? Well, volume's so high because people are psyched about the project and they're trading back and forth. And to be entirely honest, part of that would be people probably buying, holding, and restaking a little bit. I mean, I know I, for one, yeah, it's not an investment, it's a buy. You're right, thank you, you're right. Thank you for correcting me. Not a safe investment, safe buy. Safe buy of tokens. Very correct. Thank you for catching me on that. I appreciate that. Definitely a mod there. Where was I? Right, so like the volume and everything, I don't know why people are trading the way they are. I imagine that because they're rewarding for having more, people are going through and buying in to stake in. Because if you look at the rewards program, there's cases where they are actually rewarding based on, well, sorry, it's really small there, so let me make that bigger. They're rewarding for buying into liquidity. And so this would be a case where the volume's really high because they're doling out some rewards every block, and people then would want to re-buy into and get more rewards, so they would like to compound their rewards. So as soon as they get their reward, again, these are the old ones where they're offering Angry Hippo and Dark Hippo. On the previous ones, they were offering Hippo. And so that would be the case of, okay, well, I'll get my reward, and then I'll re-buy by putting back into some of that liquidity. But then in doing that, they're probably also, you know, turning around and buying more and more. And since they're doling out a little bit every single block, because we get a new block roughly every, it's 15 transactions a second, and we're getting, well, actually a few blocks a second in that regard. I have to check what the number is right now. That's kind of rolling through. As far as legit one, yes. There will be more liquidity in the LP pool. Okay, thank you for educating people on that point. I appreciate that. I can't, unfortunately, I really wish I could keep up on all the various announcements and everything. Having learned through this process, we've worked out a process there where, like, we'll be getting statements from devs to say, okay, update us on exactly what you've told your people so far so we can confirm that matches up in code. But anyway, now, to be clear here, we got an emergency withdrawal. Oh no! Emergency withdrawal! Everything's terrible! Ah, run for the... No, for fuck's sake, Jesus Christ. Again, name of the function, completely irrelevant. I could start... It's actually, I kind of want to make, like, a joke coin. I kind of want to make, like, you know, fuck you, pay me coin, and start naming all the perfectly normal functions that are doing perfectly normal things, like horrifying names to freak people out. Maybe I'll do that real quick and throw that out there and be like, look, if you really want to donate to me and you want to get a joke, here, buy this thing. Maybe I'll do that as an LGE. This thing means nothing. It's just fuck you, pay me coin. Alright, anyway. As I said, this is for the users, to be clear. This is for you if you want to get out of the liquidity, out of the rewards, out of the pool, without caring about your rewards, alright? So again, not absolutely necessary, but it is doing that check to say, okay, we're going to identify which pool, but notice here, we're basing on the message sender, alright? So nobody else can touch your funds in here. Only you can. You have the ability to come in and emergency withdraw if you really wanted to, but you don't need to. All right. Oh, replicant. Well, I'm glad you're learning a lot on being new, learning about defensive programming. Excellent. It is a wonderful thing to do. I always kind of go overkill. I think other people tell me I go overkill. I think Yax, the lead dev in the charity, goes like way overkill. But I never tell them no. I just point out I think you're going a little too far. But you know what? Screw it. If you want to like tootle around all day, metaphorically speaking, in like code body armor by writing super defensive coding and try to put in all these safety measures in case something goes wrong, kudos to you. All right, you're far better and devoted to that than I am. Anyway, so that is just this case to say, look, as a safety measure, if something does go wrong, they're giving away for you, the buyers, to come back and emergency withdraw your own tokens in that case. And it's doing so by just saying, all right, ditch the rewards that you might have been accumulating so far. That's just as a safety measure, like if something goes wrong with any of this, boom, you can get out. All right? So, do other projects hit 10,000 and how other projects hit 10,000 was usually that first mover advantage. And I don't see why Hippo can't. Like, that's not a joint, that's a cigarette. I am smoking. I just talk so much and it goes out, so I have to keep relighting it. I know, I'm terrible. I smoke way too much, but, like, I need stimulants, and yeah, fuck it. I like it. I don't really care. Might as well live to enjoy life, you know? At a certain point, I'll just get a robot body and everything will be fine. Now, save Hippo transfer. This is a way to safely transfer Hippo from one to another. This is for you guys. If you want to transfer Hippo somewhere, or, sorry, if they're transferring Hippo, they're using this to be able to send that over safely. So yes, it is internal function. You guys aren't calling this directly, but this is a safe method, kind of like we saw in the Hippo token, to say, all right, this thing wants to safely transfer Hippo to you, so here's how it can safely do that. In this case, it's taking care of that Hippo balance, so it's getting the Hippo balance here from itself, confirming that the amount that to transfer is appropriate, that it actually has, you know, that's the, the amount to transfer is, if the amount to transfer is greater than the Hippo balance, like you get down to that last little bit and it goes like, look, I'm supposed to transfer over, 50, but there's only 49 here. Here you go. You're going to get that last little bit. Else, just go ahead and transfer the amount. Pretty straightforward. And then dev, this is for getting the dev address. Again, if you would like to update the dev address, boom, you can pass it in. This is confirming, are you the dev? If you're not the dev, what are you trying to do? So this is just a way that the developer can update that, and technically anyone can call this, but it has a check here on the require. Personally, I'm a big fan of using modifiers, but not necessary in this case. Modifiers are just one of many ways to do things. It's entirely equivalent, basically, in this situation. So boom, we got the master chef down. Let's go ahead and take a look at the fund wallet, because that one's really small and simple. Oh my god, it's tiny. What is this? Boom, fund. This is the contract that is going to be holding funds to actually dole out. This is where the owner is able to deposit funds. So fund, they're passing in a token address to fund. They are passing in the address to fund that to, and the amount. And boom, they are wrapping that token in the interface for ERC20. And then they're saying, all right, go ahead and transfer that amount. So in this case, as you can see, it's technically not even doing anything special with the balance. It's not doing any weird modification. It's only transferring tokens from one token to another. In the underlying matter here, we're relying on the token itself to have that safe transfer. All right? So again, this is a way for the dev to send out funds as necessary. Safe in that it's not actually touching the balance of anything directly. It's just calling through the transfer function. Again, a good safe programming. Also get balance to find out, all right, what is the balance of the fund wallet for a particular token. All right? So again, just kind of a way for it to transfer some around and be able to hold on to some funds there. Pretty short and straightforward. Swap wallet, also relatively short, so I'm going to handle that one first, and then we'll get to Angry Hippo and Dark Hippo after this and the time lock. So in here, we've got Swap Wallet. The Swap Wallet, it is keeping track of Angry Hippo and Angry Hippo version 2. I don't recall there's Angry Hippo version 2 out yet, but I can see what they're doing here, where they're providing a way that if necessary to migrate, they can. So that's where in setting it up, they would have the Angry Hippo, they'd have the Angry Hippo version 2, same thing with the Dark Hippo version 2, good defensive architecture here, kind of like defensive programming, but architecture referring to the design, alright? And, you know, Lambo, I gotta, you know, let's get a project out that's actually going to generate some revenue and bring some funds into the charity, and let's, like, totally get you on staff, seriously. Like, you need to get paid for all the hard work you're doing. So, we'll definitely talk about divvying that up so we can, if not make this your full-time, then so on. And, yep, correct, not out yet, so thank you for clarifying that, RRBB. I appreciate you confirming that for us to say not out yet. So, again, this is where this contract is not deployed. It does not need to be deployed unless there's a need to switch. There's no plans to switch. I mean, there isn't a need right now, but they're safeguarding by saying, look, if something does happen where we need to migrate to a version 2, we've got the contract ready to be able to do that swap for you, and we'll be able to take care of that, all right? Now, in this case, it has that basic transfer to say, okay, we will go ahead and transfer some of those tokens over, simple enough. And in here has the public functions where you can pass in your Angry Hippo. It will go ahead and keep track of how much Angry Hippo is being swapped. It's going to add that on there, and is then going to safely transfer from the Angry Hippo version 2 that this thing may have possibly at some point in the future, if there does turn out to be a need to migrate to a version 2, and then is going to go ahead and safe transfer that version 2 Hippo over to someone else, and it's going to double it. So in this case, because doing that amount times 2. So this is again in that version 2 to kind of say, all right, if we do need to migrate, we'll just go ahead and double over and give you that amount. And then same thing for the swap Dark Hippo, going through that same basic process. So again, already coded in there, thus saying, hey, if we do need this, we're ready for it if it ever comes up. Don't see why it would need to, but that's because there's not any bugs in that. We'll be looking at the Angry and Dark Hippo here shortly. But in this case, to verify that, but in this case, they're just kind of priming to say, hey, maybe there's a feature we'll add in. Who knows? Maybe version 2 is an EFI token. Maybe it's got some fancy intelligence. Maybe it's doing that, like, weird stuff that Galore does, because Galore does some weird things. But, again, this is just that safeguard to say, hey, let's make sure this is going safely. Yes, I do. That's because you spammed out invites to your Discord server, and spammers get various porn thrown at them. You're lucky I didn't throw the furry porn at you. I could also throw the robot porn. If you want to see, like, toasters fucking, I got, like, reams of that. Mostly this is just my spammer one, so, you know, if you really want to keep bringing it up, we totally can. I understand you're kind of just ribbing me and having fun, but yeah, that's what spammers get. If someone sends me a Discord, if I've got time, I go over to the Discord and I spam out some, like, random porn that the majority of the population isn't going to like, whatever that is. So, moving on. Time lock. I'm heading in for the time lock. I figure that's what spammers get. If you're going to spam shit, I don't want to see it me. I'm going to spam shit, you don't want to see it you. Simple enough. I tend not to do much else, so whatever. Right, I mean, I tend not to do much else in that regard, but, like, again, it could be the furry porn, could be the robot porn. Could have thrown the Bugs Bunny porn at you. I mean, if you want to see Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd together, whew, I think it's hilarious that people make porn of cartoon characters. Alright, so, moving on for the time lock. Time lock for tokens. What? Oh, yeah, doubled money sounds nice. Yeah, it could be good. Like, but again, that's a safeguard. And they kind of already built in there. You want more porn? Okay. Cool. Alright. We'll totally do that. I know, you're just ribbing me. Like, everyone heads up there, like, you know, crypto stuff. He's just bantered, just teasing me a bit about it. They thought it was kind of funny, too. So, they're just giving me shit. So, heads up. They're not a problem. Don't worry about them. Oh, you do want... Oh, well, well... I'm not sure that's a conversation we'd be having now. Alright, we'll totally talk later. Alright, I'll show you my spam my spam cannon. I really need to build a bot for it. Anyway, so here, in handling that, this is where it's setting up that time lock to manage the admins, manage the delay, Again, very verbose contract. Is going to be reporting a lot of information and managing that stuff. Oh God, wolf porn, Jesus Christ. This is not the conversation, guys. Come on, this is about hippo. Hippo porn. We want hippo porn. And what gets hippo porn? Hippo porn means green dildos. So, hippo porn, green dildos. We want, like, just a line of green dildos across the screen as hippo porn, alright? Now, in this case, in building it out, thank you very much for trying to get me some funding. Now, in this case, for constructor, it's accepting the admin address, the delay, setting all of that up, making sure, saying admin initialize, setting it to false initially so they can be set up. Got a time delay where it's being set, making sure that the message sender is this address. I'm sorry, if it is this address, it's requiring to match and saying, alright, must call from time lock. So again, this is where technically it's a set delay, but you're only allowed to call this from inside. Also, one point here for this empty receive function, like why do they have an empty function here? That's because technically there is a standard for how things should operate. And so most contracts don't bother to have this, but technically you should have the basic functions in place even if it doesn't need to do anything. So this is where it's that basic receive function for what does this contract do when it receives funds? Nothing. It does not need to receive funds or do anything special when it receives funds. It can just receive them. Done. So, setting delay, be able to set that, make sure that the delay is greater than or equal to, require that it's greater than or equal to the minimum delay, make sure that it's less than or equal to the maximum delay, and boom, set that, and record that it's got a new delay. Pretty simple. For accept admin, there's just changing the admin of this contract. In this case, it is going to set the pending admin to address 0. So we're going to say, all right, first off, make sure that the admin is, or the person who's trying to accept the admin is the pending admin. If so, go ahead and match that up. And once done, go ahead and switch the pending admin to address 0. Also, set pending admin. This is, again, if the admin's initialized, then, because this will be true, then go ahead and pass in and say, all right, then make sure the message sender is this. So essentially, this can set its own admin. If not, then go ahead and set it to whatever, if the message sender equals the admin, then first call from admin. So basically saying, look, the only way you can set this up and take admin control is if you have control of this contract to begin with, and then can tell this contract to make you the admin. Simple enough. And in queue transaction, this is big long point here. All of this stuff here that it's doing, oh my goodness, so long. It is queuing up a transaction to be done. And in doing that, it's saying, all right, look, are you the admin? If not, fuck off. All right, what time are we supposed to do this? Okay, cool. We'll just add in that delay of how long it's supposed to wait. Then we will have that encoding to say, all right, well, I need a transaction hash for what we're going to execute. So we're going to hold on to that. And then we're going to queue that transaction hash for something to be done. And in doing that, in queuing it, we're going to report that out and boom, return that transaction hash. So again, in this case, in the kekak and executing things, this ABI encode that it's doing, this is technically actually making that call out. So it's making that call out to another address. It's passing what the value is, the signature, the data, and when it should run. It is going ahead and trying to execute that and storing that in the transaction hash. It is then storing that in the mapping of queued transactions to say, okay, I've got one. Now, to be clear here, it's technically not executing the whole thing, all right? It's just holding on to that transaction hash. So I want to be clear here. This is not it doing things. This is saying I'm preparing to execute a transaction, and then I will put that transaction in the queue to be able to execute. Yes, you should buy. You should definitely buy. Thank you for pointing that out. We are buyers. We are not investors. Investors might scare state people. Because we have to understand. I mean, we really can't be too mad at them. Because we got to kind of understand that, like, the entirety of government is like a halfway house for retards. So they have problems with, like, complicated ideas. They can understand big words, but they can only understand, like, very rote definitions of big words, and they have to have big, giant manuals to explain what the big words mean. So if we consider that government is like a halfway house for retards on all sides, I'm not picking fucking sides here. If you're a politician, you're a failure at fucking life. Because if you were able to succeed at all, you wouldn't be a fucking politician trying to suck up to people to get a paycheck, alright? You'd actually be doing things that generate value. So that's why I'm going to make a point now. We're saying buyers, not investors, because the state doesn't understand nuanced terms and thus might get a little confused. So yes, everything's good. Hold on. Just hold on to this. When we're done, we'll share the video. So let me go ahead and run through this. We'll finish it up. Not real quick, but make sure we get through everything pretty quick. And then you guys can go share the video. Let everyone know, hey, this is a safe buy. There do not seem to be any bugs. It has very defensive code. It's protecting against self against possible future exploits. And boom, there we go. So, from here. Oh, you can go ahead and take the clip of me saying politicians and state workers are fucking idiots. I don't care. I don't contract with state people anymore, so fuck them. Doesn't matter. Alright, cancel transaction. Gives the ability that if a transaction is queued up, it will go ahead and cancel that out. Execute the transaction. This is where the developer can say, okay, go ahead and execute the transactions that are queued up. This is where it's going to go through and say, okay, well, I need to execute one that's in the queue, so let's go ahead and set up to be able to do that. Let's go ahead and confirm that it's actually in there and being queued up. Cool, it is. Let's make sure that it's actually timed to execute. If it is, then go ahead and also make sure that it's within a grace period, that the transaction isn't too stale. And then going through and like, all right, well, let's go ahead and set that transaction hasn't been executed, or sorry, that it doesn't have queue transactions. And then from there, set up the call data. Whoops, did not mean to drag that around. Set up the call data to call it, and then boom, this is where the ABI encode packed is setting up to execute that. All this is doing is taking the entire information about the transaction and encoding that. If you ever look at like the actual transaction info, in fact, heck, I got an example over here where it was happening. If we dig down and, oh, pardon, it's not in here. Let me get back to that. I believe it was here in Master Chef. And again, all the vulnerabilities that Mythex found, they're all like fairly irrelevant in that when you dig into what is actually happening, there's not actually a vulnerability there. Here we are, show steps to reproduce. If we look in here, like the functional withdrawal, all of this information, that actually gets copied out as... I don't have my Atom shortcut there. That's right, I had to remove that. That gets copied out as... There we go. I need to fix Atom. My Atom install is garbage. So if I copy out the raw, as you can see that input there? That big long... Oh, here, I'll close all this. This big long list of like garbage here. That is information about the transaction, what's going on. That's kind of what is in this encode pack. So again, this is just setting it up to say, look, we got to put it into a form that the computer's going to understand. With Ethereum, boom, that's how we do that. So there we go. All right. Well, thank you for saying you're going to watch from now on. I appreciate that. I hope if I ever am not satisfying that, then please let me know. And if you're working on anything, if you've got a project, let me know. Just please don't pester me. I swear to God, it's very rude. If I have not responded, understand that that's because I'm trying to diligently work through things to where I can give you a meaningful answer. So I apologize if I haven't responded to anything. Get terribly busy and sometimes lose track. And if somebody, like, send me the message, I will get through it. I have the logs of everything, and I do come back to that. Data Lords can tell you, I do come back. It just may take a bit of time. So can some of the Ample guys, so can some of the, well, to be honest, I got a lot of people I need to get through. DeFi Academy, Wrecked, whatever. Just don't pester me. Like, I'm sorry. I'm just not going to put up with it. I got better shit to do than deal with someone constantly pestering me. If you pester me too much, or you try to call me out in public for not responding to a DM, we're done. We're blocking you. I'm not going to work with you. Sorry. Just a heads up there. Like, do that. Unless I tell you to pester me, to remind me if I seem to lose track, don't fucking do it. Send me a request. I will definitely help you out and get to that point. It just might take a little while because we're ramping up and getting staff. But moving on. So, there we are. In this case. And also, I don't want anyone to think that I have neglected Audit DAO. We are working on Audit DAO. There has been consultation with lawyers. There has been research done onto the legal matters of how to handle such things properly. So I appreciate you, Lambo, for sharing the Chain Discord. Chain Discord is a project I'm working on with some of the Orb community. That is the Audit DAO Discord. Audit DAO is going to be the secular version of the charity that I'm currently working with. That one's going to be entirely committed to you guys, entirely doing whatever you want. I just kind of, in setting things up, I wanted to be able to manage things how I like, and when it finally comes time to be able to say, okay, when Audit DAO gets set up, I can totally hand that off to you guys. You guys can manage whatever you see fit. We can continue working with Audit DAO, but then at least there's this charity over here where I and the team that I'm working with can do things a little more in line with what we want to do, and kind of treat it as sort of like a similar charity that we can manage to provide services, and Audit DAO can be a similar charity, but you guys can manage. That way we're both happy. We get what we want, where we get to make decisions and kind of do whatever we want. You guys can have a charity where you guys can do whatever you want. So we're going to form both. Hopefully we'll be a lovely partnership and a marriage made in heaven. So, moving on. Again, this is just executing some queued up transaction that needs to get done. Fantastic. Let's move on to the last point. Angry Hippo! Woo! Angry Hippo! In this one, for setting it up, boom, Angry Hippo version 2. So this is going to be able to handle that swap over for setting that up. In this case, we got some basic addresses here, keeping track of dev address, fund address, reward per block LP, the rate of the dev fee. We don't know exactly what this number means yet, because you have to see how it's being used in the math, to be clear. So that 5 might be a multiplier, it might be a divisor. It might be just a straight number we're using. Not entirely sure. Well, they'll hold any judgments until we get down to the actual math where it's being used, alright? Oh, yes. Yes, Angry Hippo. This is your little baby there. By all means, Hippo, have a wrench there. I know you're probably not going to stick around. I'm not expecting you to, but like, thank you very much. I'm glad you guys were also so patient. Like, you were beautiful in doing all of this. You were patient. You let me know what was going on when you got another auditing firm in line. I totally understand that, and I appreciate you still giving me the chance to get this done. So again, you guys are beautiful. You've been great to work with. You've been very patient, very appreciative. So sorry. Thank you. Yes, there is an education program. We are actually having to staff up to be able to handle that. Education program for the charity is hands-on. Literally, it's go complete Crypto Zombies, having completed Crypto Zombies to get your basics in Ethereum programming so you can kind of understand the fundamentals of how to do it. Come back to us. I'd like to see that screenshot of your final completion of that. And boom, we will get you on a project, and we will have you start developing. We will kind of dole out little tasks to you to test you out to see if you're reliable. And if we don't get something back after like one prodding, we just stop talking to you and move on with our lives. So that's how it can happen. You can go complete cryptozombies.io and send me that screenshot of you completing that task, and boom, we will work on getting you involved in a project. Now, from here, we have, so again, our various addresses. We'll be able to look down and see what they are and how they're being used. We've got our stake tracker, so this is keeping track of the staked Hippo, the staked Hippo LP, and the various rewards. In this case, it is keeping track of the total amount staked and the total staked amount LP, and in constructing that is making sure that it's minting out to the message sender a certain amount. Again, remember, gotta move that in 18 decimal points here. But in all of this, it is calculating out the reward amounts, and thus, boom, we'll dispense those off to the appropriate recipient. Alright? So, in the events, can say staked, unstaked, staked LP, unstaked LP, and rewards. In all of these, it is keeping track of the user. Indexed is a little safety measure to make sure on how it's handling the memory, and that's going to be more efficient in that regard. And pardon us, I had not announced the education program yet in any detail. We wanted to clear our plate a little bit, get Hippo out the door, finish wrapping up the Audit platform version 1 to get that out the door, and then, boom, can continue on with, expanding and ramping up. And so that's where we will be making the more official announcement, especially when we launch our webpage. We were planning on doing that later this evening. Quite possibly could. Yax is busting their ass to handle some redesigns because they realized in the auditing platform, like, oops, we didn't count for a scenario that we realized when we were doing our testing. So we're going to redesign a few things and take care of that. So slight delay there. Yax is busting their ass, but I don't want to overcommit them, and I need to hop back on development there. So we should have that out relatively quickly. That also reminds me, that means as we roll out the donation platform, whoops, we are still offering the limited time NFT for donating to the charity. Very basic, crude site that we threw up. I apologize. None of us are front-end developers. We're all back-end. Yax is the closest to a front-end developer we have, and that they actually know JavaScript, can actually put stuff together, but even then, they just don't like doing the fluffy designs or anything, so boom, off they go. So that's the point there. You can donate directly to me. Anything you send to me goes pretty much into funding the charity, or playing around with various investments to try to test out projects. Very often I'll actually just engage with something to go analyze the transactions that it's doing, to confirm that that's what's in the code in there. So pretty much anything you sent in is used for research purposes or for going into the charity. If you would like to donate to the charity directly, you can do that through the link there. We are fully incorporated. The state made a mistake in the paperwork where they misspelled the name, so we are getting that fixed. We'll be posting the EIN, the filing number, everything, so you can verify as soon as we have that resolved, because we were kind of advised, like, you know what, get that fixed before you start telling everybody, because that could lead to some confusion and some problems. So we're just getting that cleared up there. They added a G into church. It's church. What the fuck, guys? Come on. Anyway, so moving in, we got the update staking rewards. Again, updating for a particular address. In this case, it's confirming, all right, what is that address staked? Cool. Have they been rewarded since the last block? Awesome. Let's go ahead and figure out what the multiplier is. Let's go ahead and figure out what the reward to give them is. Let's go ahead and multiply that out and say, cool, how much do they actually get based on how much they staked? And then go ahead and reward them that amount. Awesome. Straightforward, easy math, simple to review. Update the staking reward LP, simple enough. We're getting the account, the address for the account that's moved in. So again, this is a case where this is just updating. This is not giving anyone anything. In both of these cases, because we're basing on the block number, and because we're checking the block number to see is it appropriate to actually give that out, then there you go. But as you can see, this is a way that when they're modifiers, and so later on, when you're interacting with the contract, you're going to be automatically updating your own staking rewards, all right? So I don't want anyone thinking here, oh no, somebody can do something. The worst anyone could ever do is, well, we'll see how that's attached to the functions down below, but it looks like the worst anyone could do is tell the system to dole out your rewards for you. Oh no, somebody's going to spend the gas to credit my reward to my balance. That's great? Terrible? It's just like, it's not, my point being is that it's not a problem. Alright, so in doing this, you can go ahead and set the Hippo token. Awesome. So that way Angry Hippo knows about Hippo. Can set the Hippo LP token. Awesome. So, whoops, I keep dragging that around, don't mean to. So it can know about the Hippo LP token. Figure out what the rewards per block is. Simple enough. Set the reward amount per block. Simple enough. Set the reward per block LP. So how much is going to be reward per block LP? Simple enough. Set the dev address. Set the fund address. Pretty straightforward. That would be the fund wallet, it looks like, over here. Now, in this case, staking Hippo, you're staking, confirmed. Nope, it's not started yet, so you can't stake. So it's got that little check here, like, well, we're not ready yet. From here, it's going to require that you have to amount or stake an amount that is in place. And again, we can see that update staking rewards, and that is pulling in the message sender there. Pardon, I had made that change and issued the pull request. That was message.sender. But even then, as we saw earlier, it's the passing it through the modifier effectively wraps it. And so this is just saying, look, you're going to stake an amount, we're going to pull in your message sender, and boom, we're going to update your rewards there. So there you are. So, Yes, thank you for explaining what spam is. You know, I don't... Thank you for answering general questions. Anyone that answers general questions gets a wrench, because I like helpful people. I like being helpful. I like the head pats. Other people that want to be helpful, I like to reward that and recognize it. So thank you for being helpful to people. All right, moving on. Unstake, simple matter. It's going to update the staking rewards when you try to remove. It's going to check to see, all right, have you even started? Are you trying to remove an amount less than or equal to what you've staked? If you're trying to remove, if you're trying to take out a portion, like if the amount is greater than 0 in the unstaked and there's a further problem, then what the hell are we doing? As in, see there, this amount that we're pulling in, like we want to make sure that it's actually safe. In here for the total staked, we're saying, all right, let's first off take off the amount that you've staked. Now we're keeping track of that here, and again, this is a good safeguard against a reentrancy attack, because we're making the data change here before we go and access any of the addresses or do anything. So if something were to happen where someone were to figure out a way to re-enter, and that means that we get down here just calling something like message sender, they've done something felonious here, and then route that back in through the top, then they will already have deducted the amount that was staked. So if they come back in the top, then it'll run through and go, wait a minute, you already unstaked. What the hell is going on here? That's not acceptable. So, because we're requiring that 0 be less than the amount staked. There we go. So it's just doing that check, like, wait a minute, we already took that out before we transferred it to you, and if you try to come back in, we're going to catch that. This is basically a custom implementation of the reentrancy guard that we find in Open Zeppelin. So, yes, you get a wrench, everyone gets a wrench, I give out wrenches. Have all the wrenches. They're free, you know? Digital commodities can be free, so why not? If it doesn't cost anyone anything to copy it, why not just give them out? Cool. So, moving on. Send reward. This is again, we're going to update the staking reward. We're going to send that reward. It's picking up on message sender, and boom, is going to send you your own reward. It's going to calculate that out with the total weight, the reward division, figure out the funding address, and again, in all of these cases, it is going to mint out some more angry tokens. So again, remember when I was saying before, I consider this actually a very safe design because there is not an outstanding, like, large quantity of tokens that is sitting there kind of waiting for someone to attack it. The reward tokens don't exist when the reward program starts. The reward tokens are created over time, and we know where there will be an end to that because we know when the reward program will end. So at a certain point this runs out, so it's perfectly safe that it is creating more reward tokens in the case. Like I said, the name of the function, completely irrelevant. What the function does, you have to go figure out how it's being used, not just what the function does. So I wanted to call that out again in case anyone had arrived late or is going to be jumping around in the video, and as we see that. So I consider this a safer way to manage things than locking up tokens in some other contract or something. Now, in Stake LP, they are staking LP tokens, simple enough. They are going through that same process of getting the amount that's being added and then going ahead and transferring that from the message sender to themselves. Simple enough. Now, in unstaking the LPs, basic process, just kind of going through the reverse, making sure that they do actually have the amount, that it's greater than 0. And then from there, actually transferring those out from the contract to the user. Claim LP rewards. There's recording a reward LP, going through the same basic... As you can see, it's a lot of stuff here. Personally, I might have stuck some of this in a modifier, where we have these, like, continually repeating lines here. But that's where... You know what? I should probably do a video where I demonstrate what the order of operations is for modifiers to clarify that for people. But that is an important point here, where... if you stack up multiple modifiers on a function, there is a particular order of operation in getting that done, and you need to be careful exactly like what you're doing and how that's being handled. Alright, so moving on. Almost done with this one, and then we'll take a look at Dark Hippo, and that'll be it. I figured Dark Hippo will be pretty quick because we're probably going to see a lot of similar stuff that we see here. So, get Hippo reward, or sorry, set start to say, yep, we're starting off the rewards in this program. Awesome. I'm not sure what the dot means, but cool. Then we got our get reward, our Hippo reward. This is going to be a view, so this is literally just telling you what the reward is. So I want to be clear here. It's a very common usage or language in development. We call them getters. Getters just give you information. They don't do anything. That's their whole point, is that they don't change anything about the state of the program. And so don't worry with the get. It's not actually withdrawing or sending that to you. It's just calculating out what that should be so you can easily see that. All right? That's why it's also, you can see that with the view. View functions don't change the state. They just report information. All right? So, so we are, we're starting in the current directory, and then we're moving up one level in the path. All right. Where was I? Right. Yes, so getting the Hippo LP rewards, same basic process. Again, just viewing that. Same thing with the get staked amount. Again, just viewing it. Again, basically everything that has these view functions, entirely safe, because the whole point of view is telling the system these functions don't change state, they just report information. And we can see from the way that it's getting that information, it is actually reporting accurate information. Simple enough. All right, we've got Dark Hippo. Bam! In doing Dark Hippo, we have same basic setup. And again, pardon if I'm moving too fast through this one, but as we can see, it's kind of the same basic setup. It's got a stake tracker where it's keeping track of things. It has the same basic setup, dev address, fund address. The block to start with has a reference to the Hippo token, as will record information about staking, unstaking, staked LPs, unstaked LPs, rewards. I love having verbose contracts. Thank you, thank you, thank you for storing log information. It makes it so much easier to investigate matters. It makes it so much easier to keep track of things. So, anyway, that is where were we? Right. Oh, okay, same as D Hippo. Cool, then we can just kind of accelerate through here and confirm that, like, yep, staking rewards are the same, update staking reward LP is the same, setting the Hippo token, the Hippo LP, the reward block, set the reward block both. Yep, all these are working out to be the exact same. Same with the staking, same with the unstake, same with the stake LP, unstake LP, send reward, same basic, yep, same code. So, yep, there we go. We've got our get Hippo reward, get Hippo there. Again, I'm just confirming, going through you guys so you can see, like, yep, it's exactly the same, just has a different name. So, there we go. That's also one reason why it says Angry Hippo in the comments. It was a copy, and they just changed the name. So, I do it all the time myself. I forget to update every single little comment. That's why it says that, but it is the Dark Hippo. So, there we go. We have the, well, audit done. Code is safe and sound. I'm not sure about the economics, so can't give you financial advice there. You guys can figure that out. Will not actually professionally engaged by you, therefore take this as an education on code and a coder giving their personal comments or discussion on how they feel about the code in a project. If you would like to, if you actually want indemnification against anything that I'm saying, you're going to have to engage me professionally, because you have no idea how much fucking professional insurance costs. I have to keep a multi-million-dollar policy for my contracting work, my day job. So, sorry, if you want actual indemnification, if you want to actually be able to sue me if something goes wrong, you're going to have to engage me, and you're going to have to help me pay that insurance policy, because they're the ones that are going to actually pay you. So, other than that, this is me talking about code. This is me just discussing economics, not actual professional advice or indemnification, but I hope this educational program has helped you understand what is going on in Hippo, and further, how to read code yourself, because I can't get to every contract. We are ramping up. We will be getting more auditors in place, but I seriously doubt that we're going to be able to get through absolutely everything out there. So you definitely should learn to read your own contracts, understand what some of them are doing, at the very least to do a preliminary investigation. And if there's anything you see weird, then bring it over to the Audit DAO server. Bring it over to the Audit DAO server, ask some people, ask them what's up, bring it over to DeFi Academy. That's another group that is doing a wonderful job of answering questions. I'm not directly affiliated with them, So I just want to be clear here. I sometimes pass through. They do seem to have a problem of like shitty people sometimes rolling through. The usual community there is good. The people. Why can I not get? Oh, okay. Pardon. Then I'll have to talk to them and see about getting that invite for DeFi Academy. But the DeFi Academy guys are also good. I'll get a tweet out for them after I talk to them about possibly inviting people in. I think they're maybe a little more selective on the points there. But yeah, head over to the Audit DAO server. Feel free to head over to the Chain server. A lot of people there. If you've got questions, much better if you find something in code that you're not familiar with, or you have questions, and you're doing your own research. If you're doing your own research by auditing contracts yourself to get an understanding of what you're going to be buying into, and you've got some question, much better to head over to the Audit DAO server or the Chain server, post the question there. Feel free to @ me, but you're going to get a much faster response there because I'm only one Doge. I can only do so much. My paws are small. It's sometimes difficult to type. And so we're just going to have to run through that. So, oh, what happened with YFMS? Yeah, YFMS turned out that was a somewhat advanced version, not exactly a reentrancy attack, kind of a version of the reentrancy attack where the way that data was being modified, they were calling... it seemed that they were calling the function inside the contract to handle that, but that chained through to something else to ultimately be calling on the contract target. And so in that case, the order of operations was slightly incorrect, and so that allowed for a version of a reentrancy attack. So that's what happened there with YFMS. That's where, again, in the audit, I didn't do an audit of them, I just did a code review. I gave them advice on how to implement it, but that kind of highlights a point here, to be very clear, that I did not have control over the code that was being deployed. So I cannot be absolutely sure what was out there. In fact, to be honest, that's why I'm putting the entire auditing platform together, because my entire criticism of the auditing process is we look at source code. Maybe we look at code that's on the blockchain, but I'm of the opinion that by the time the auditor is looking at code on the blockchain, it's kind of too late, you know? Like, if it would have been a scam, or there would have been a vulnerability, it probably would have been exploited by then. So it's not entirely useless, but it's like, it's already out, it already has funding, it's a little late to be auditing then, and if you're auditing source code before it's deployed, where's the chain of custody to verify that what you audited is actually on the blockchain? Hence why we're working on the auditing platform so that we can still do the pre-review. In fact, like what happened with Hippo, like what happened with others, is to say, look, we're happy to go through your source code. We're happy to provide fixes to help you get to that point where you would pass the audit. The expectation being is that when you come through the church charity or come through Audit DAO, our intention is that we work with you to get your code up to snuff so that you can pass the audit. So that way, the dev and the auditor should really know what the result of the audit is before it's completed. And the whole reason that we're deploying the contract in a deactivated state and then doing the videos like this so you guys can see the work being done is to really verify, give you that chain of custody to say, look, the report we're giving you about the quality of the code is based on the code that is currently on the blockchain. So that way we can't have a problem like what happened in a few areas, like with YFMS. We had given them recommendations, and they had made some last-minute changes in there, and we just, in the consulting the recommendations, just did not get back on addressing that, so a mistake was made, and thus it was able to slip through, which really just cemented me. That's why I said from that point, like, all right, look, I can't do any more audits. I can't call it an audit until I have the platform in place. I can do code reviews, but I had already committed to a few projects that I would give them an audit, hence Hippo being one of them. So negotiated and said, look, technically I'm not going to call this an audit because I got high standards on what counts as an audit, but I can give you a code review like this. Your contract's already out, so people can go double check, and I can double check that yes, what is these contracts that are on the blockchain, they do match up to what we have here. But that's where you're great. I promise that to you. I want to make sure you get that. The community already sent in tips on this case, and boom, there we go. Have they worked with you on the rename Luca? No, they have not talked to me at all about Luca. I have no problem with them. Sorry, Luca, yes. Got no issue with them. No concerns on that team, but been very busy, have not been engaged, and so they're kind of on their own out there. If they want to talk to me, then happy to continue talking with them and working with them. But that is where I've made it clear I'm not going to consult on anything like that unless I can handle the deployment. All right, so I did not. They've been very busy, and I haven't really discussed the matter with them. But my standard going forward is I'm not helping on a project unless we can verify the code that's getting deployed to the blockchain, and I can know that's the case. So there we go. So that is why I've also not been doing as many live streams on these points, because we want to make sure the audit platform is in place, because again, I'm holding very, very rigid standards. We saw what happened when I tried to get lax and help people out before. I don't want to make that mistake again, so I'm going to be a hard ass on everything and say I'm not going to consult on anything. I'm not going to code review anymore. This is the last one of these code reviews. This is not the last thing I'm ever doing, but to be clear, this is the last thing I'm going to look at code-wise, the last stream I'm going to do without having that platform in place, all right? To be very clear. I'll have streams, we'll talk about stuff, I'll have some more educational programs, we'll definitely show off the progress, because we're literally almost done. We were doing some testing, Yax was discussing some of the concerns they were having on the design and possible errors. We identified, oh crap, we missed a couple points, like we did not, or I should say, I did not account for some scenarios that could occur. Hence why I got Yax. They are a much better coder and developer and designer than I am. I design whole systems. They design things at the low level and help out with large system design, so I'm ever thankful that Yax is involved. Like, if you guys think I'm good, Yax is better than me, alright? They're just very shy, they don't want recognition, they're very monkish in that regard. Hence why they're one of our faceless monks. They do not maintain a normal identity, they do not want a normal identity, they don't want to be acknowledged as a normal identity, we just know them as handles and encryption keys, so whatever. I have no idea who the fuck Yax is or what is going on with them, other than they are much better at this than I am, hence why I'm so thrilled that they're able to be involved. So, we identified one little gap in the design, we're accounting for that, doing our refactor, and we'll get that out. So, similar point on the website, it's been redesigned, we're going to try to push that out as quickly as we can, but in handling that and needing to make some adjustments, slight delay. So I understand that I told everyone, hey guys, we will be swapping over the NFT, or we may be swapping over the NFT here. In setting that up, set up to say, you know what, unfortunately, slight delay. I did say that would be a slight delay, but that does mean that if you would like to get the inaugural church donation NFT, you can. If you take a look at that, right now when we finally do switch this over, we'll be fixing the IPFS link, because right now OpenSea doesn't understand IPFS directly, so we need to adjust the metadata. But boom, a sample here, you'll get a nice one of that picture. This one will, actually it's a gold trimmed version to show that it's the very first one. That one will never be available ever again. So, you got some time. If you want to come in, you want to donate, it's a minimum of 0.1 ETH. You can definitely send in more when we do switch this over and fix the metadata, so OpenSea will actually work with it. We were trying to use a draft of the metadata where we could link to IPFS. It worked in testing, just did not make it through to production. We're guessing some modification of the draft or change there. So that is where we are going to adjust that, but we insist on using IPFS because we want to make this perpetual. We want to make sure that we don't rely on standard centralized infrastructure for this to function. All right? So with that, thank you all. Lambo, you are always a huge help. I am very sorry that I am not letting you know what's going on and scheduling these things. You are absolutely amazing for jumping in. I hadn't really felt I wanted to impose by letting you know and asking you to come in, so I'm giving some time to decompress after this and tend to some tasks, but I do fully intend to come back to you, Lambo. Let's talk about scheduling. Let's talk about getting you on staff. We're not great on the funding just yet. That is entirely up to the community, but we got a plan. You're involved with Chain. That should generate some nice revenue, and thus we should be able to start hiring people on, and I definitely want to get you and many other people. There has been so many helpful people in there. Get them on staff if you guys would like, all right? There are many more out there. I will actually be honest, it will be far too long to list, and I have many things I need to get to. So, with that, thank you everyone. I hope you found this useful. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from the experience. And if this inspires you to make your own projects, even better. Even better. Get out there, write something, code something. Let me pull up the Crypto Zombies site real quick to drop that link on people. It's again cryptozombies.io. I'm a real big fan. I'm a huge proponent overall, just everywhere, of project-based learning. I think courses, I think curriculums are complete garbage. I got where I am in life by doing projects. Like, my entire knowledge, I literally tested out of high school as soon as it was legally possible for me to leave, tested out, went off and started working in IT. And everything I have learned has been hands-on, trying to solve problems and figuring it out as I go. So, I think it's the best way to learn. It's got me where I am now. Other people might have other styles, whatever. I'm not saying other ways are bad necessarily, but I really like it. Thus, why I keep coming up with recommendations of things like games to work with. Because winning the game can be like completing a project. So if you don't have a project idea that you want to finish, or you have no idea where to start with, start here with cryptozombies.io. If you would like to get involved in any project we're working on, you would like to go through the educational program, first thing, at the very least, complete the Solidity one. If you complete both, even better. I would love to see people complete both. There isn't one here for Viper yet. Viper is very new. Who knows? Maybe we can write one ourselves. So, with that, if you want in on the education or want in any of the projects, show me your development chops by either showing me some working code that you can refer to. And if you're going to give me working code as a sample, I need at least a commit on that repository from the same user, at least one PGP signed, and I need that PGP key in Keybase to at least have some link of identity to confirm that, yes, this is you, and then we'll go over to Keybase and have you message. That, or we'll talk to each other through the GitHub, like I'll file an issue, and then you'll say, yes, this is me, to prove that you own that. Otherwise, complete Crypto Zombies, get the screenshot at the end, at the very least the Solidity one. If you'd like to do the Libra, it's a wonderful place to begin with, and send me that screenshot, and we will begin getting people onboarded. Again, our educational program is hands-on. So to be clear, there are not classes, there is not a curriculum, there is not a test book, there is not labs. It is literally hands-on apprenticeship type work. You would be given tasks to complete on an actual project, and all of your work would be reviewed by someone who has more experience, more knowledge, and they would tell you where there have been mistakes, where things need to be improved. You would go off and do that. You'll need to write all the tests, but all of that will be hands-on. If you have no idea how to do some of those parts, that's fine. We will take time to do that little bit of instruction there. But again, the whole point is very hands-on. You have to be self-motivated, all right? But the very fact that you're coming to us, I think, indicates that you are. So, with that, again, thank you, everyone. I'm so glad people are getting value out of this. I have no idea whether it's even possible to link a video in Etherscan, because they've got a way to file an audit, and I got no idea. You know what? Let me do a check. But with that, I am going to go ahead and sign off. I will see if I have a way to add this. Actually, once more of these are out, let me talk with the Hippo Finance people so we can get the actual contract addresses. Actually, technically I can get them from the website, but just to make my life easier. And I'll head over to Etherscan and file what I can about this audit, so that's on that record there. Alright? So, thank you, everyone. You're marvelous. So many of you are so friendly, so helpful. It's really keeping me motivated to get all of this done, because you guys are just so appreciative, which really just demonstrates that you're getting value out of it. And I'm a Doge. I like the head pats, so the head pats are good. So thank you, everyone, and I will have to say good night. I have been very busy, exhausted. I have not touched a video game in like 2 months. With the auditing platform just about done, I'm going to go take a look there. I'm going to go ahead... oh, thank you. And so I'm going to try to wrap up the auditing platform as best I can today. With that in the bag, we'll put it on testnet, do some tests, confirm that it works there, send people out the address for it on testnet so people can play around with it, see how it functions. It'll have an audited project, but you can at least see it there. And then I think I'm going to take a break from there for tomorrow, because like I said, I have not touched a single video game in like 2 months. I really need to, like, throw pixels at things and watch pixels explode. Maybe I'll do a stream on that, I'm not sure. I'm probably also gonna get some more sleep.